Hey guys, welcome to the live stream today. We're going to go over 15 Amazon tools that you can buy to install your power system. So we're going to go over here and hop over to Amazon here in just a second. But what I wanted to do was take you through a couple of the examples of the tools that I use when I'm installing power systems in vans. Stuff that, pretty much everything you can buy on Amazon, and things that really make it really easy. I would say if you have the budget, I would get all of these because they have helped me very, very much. So yeah, let's jump on into it. If you have any questions, put them in the chat below and we will, I'll answer them. If you have any questions on these tools as we go through, I'm trying not to rush through it, so I'm going to talk about a little bit of the details on each of these tools. So for example, we've got these pliers right here. So what I'll do is, this is literally what I have in my shopping cart right now. I put 15 in here, and then what I'm going to do later in the video is I'm going to do some bonus tools. So that's stuff that if you're already ready to go with these, it's the next step in stuff you would want to go ahead and purchase. Because if you're installing a power system in your van, this is the necessities. This is stuff that you're going to buy anyway, so might as well get a recommendation from me, right? All right, so the first thing we'll go over, and it's really no particular order, but we'll kind of put an order together here. Let's start with like hand tools. So we'll go through a couple hand tools. As you can see, this is obviously all available on Amazon to purchase. So we'll have some hand tools. We'll have some electrical items such as shrink wrap, or the shrinkable wire wrap, heat shrink tubing it's also called. We'll talk about some power, some cable. Marine grade cable is really what we want to look at, as well as welding wire, which is down here at the bottom. So we got some pure copper. We'll talk about some ends, so like for battery terminal connections, and then we'll kind of finish up with some extras such as crimping tools, battery lugs, and then at the very bottom I've got some bonuses down here. So stuff in this category, we'll go into a little bit more detail about why this would really help you out. All right, so at the top of the list is the Klein Tools 11061 wire stripper. This is one of my most favorite tools to use in the van. And I've got an example of it right here. So let me just pull this up. There you go. Make sure you guys can see it on the screen, get all the details. I'm sure all you guys are on Amazon. So you know how to just type this in and look it up. Later on, what we'll do is we'll put links to all these tools in the chat. And let's see here. So we'll go back to this, don't freak out. I'm going to go to my face here for a second, because I want to show you this tool. So this is what the tool looks like. And to use this tool, I guess I could have had some wire ready. There we go. We got plenty of wire in the shop. So we have our tool and we got some wire. So most of the time you guys will have those wire strippers that have the fingers in them. And, well, heck, I'll just grab that too. And you got the fingers, and it's, everybody probably has a pair of these. They're just a small one with like the holes in them. Right here. These right here. So everybody usually has a pair of these. They're either very cheap, they're like from Harbor Freight, or they might be a nicer pair. So these are okay, but the problem with these is, if you guys have used them before, when you go to strip the wire and you go to pull it, now I'm gonna do this the wrong way just to prove a point, but you can cut the wires in here, all right? And the reason that's very dangerous in any electrical situation is because you're increasing the resistance on these fine wires. So the gauge of a wire is dependent on not necessarily how many strands, but how thick, the thickness and number of copper strands within the cable. So if you improperly strip this and you start pulling these pieces off and you end up with less wire, then this wire is going to heat up and it's not going to be rated for whatever capacity that you have. So when you hear these stories about people's vans catching on fire, what's happening is this wire, it doesn't have connection is not good, so there's going to be a lot of resistance built up right here at this connection point, and essentially this wire is almost going to turn into like a toaster oven in your van, and that's really how it happens. The resistance, there's not enough connection here to allow the electricity to flow freely, and this will start to heat up and get really hot. In a perfect world, your fuse is going to melt before that, but guess what? If you sized your fuse to the wire properly, but when you went to strip the wire, you removed half the wires, that wire is not rated the same, even though the rest of the wire is fine. So something you can do, a tool that can give you a bit more peace of mind and speed on building the van, is this tool right here. Again, Klein Tools, this is the 11061. Okay, so check it out. It's got teeth right here in the bottom, and you can just cut your wire. This is a bad example right now because I have highly used this, and I've used it for wire that is not supposed to be cut by this. So I've used it for much thicker wire, so the teeth are a little dull. But it has something down here where you can actually cut it. And then this is the coolest part. So check this out. So watch what happens with this head. So the head, when you squeeze the handle, one finger comes down on the this side. It holds the thick part of the wire, and then this other finger on this side pulls strips the wire for you. So I'll do it. See if we can do it in slow motion here. So it comes down, the teeth grab it, and then the back teeth pulls it off. So do you see how fast it is? So you just put the wire in there. Actually, I did it backwards. Hold on, I'm gonna have to do it backwards because we're on camera. All right, so you put the wire in, and then where that line is right here, that is where you're gonna strip it, or that's where the strip's gonna happen. So let's see here. There you go. So it comes down, and then it just, see? It just pulls it off like that. And the other part is right here. When you let go, it ejects it out. So I'm going to cut a couple pieces of wire here, just as an example. I'll show you how fast I can strip them. So say you're in the van and you're up in the corner and you got your things you need to strip for your lights. You can just take it, 1, 2, 3, and then you got it done. It's really, really fast. This thing is awesome. So yeah, just buy this. I mean, you can use it for your house too. This will strip solid wire that's 10 to 20 gauge, and then stranded wire, which is this. So stranded is this, strands. Stranded wire is stranded wire is what you want to have in a van. So when you go to, we'll talk about some more wire here in a second, but when you go to buy the welding wire for the big connections to the battery, you want it stranded. You don't want anything solid. So Romex cable in your home, that's solid cable, of that solid copper cable. If you've ever stripped it like a Romex cable, you notice that it's a solid piece of copper. It's not stranded. And that's okay in a house because the house is not moving. But in a van with everything moving, stranded wire will allow more movement without weakening the joint. So for example, if you've ever had like a thin piece of metal, let's see if I got a piece of metal. Anyway, the point I was making was if you have a piece of metal and you bend it back and forth a bunch of times, if it's a solid piece of metal, it'll eventually break. But with the stranded cable, it can take a lot of punishment. I mean, obviously you're not going to do that in a van, but that's the point. That's why you want to use it with something like that. All right, let's throw this away. Let's go to the next tool. Again, this thing, awesome. Okay, so next tool, $20. I mean, well worth its weight. So let's exit out of that window. Let's go down to the next part. So the next tool, right here, the next tool is this guy. Oh, gotta change the screen. There you go. So the next tool is a different type of wire stripper. So this is a round cable stripper. And the reason that you want to, again, this is, I get kind of excited about these tools because they're so worth it. So this is a round cable stripper. So this is what it looks like, okay? And let's go to some Amazon pictures. Maybe they got some cool stuff. So if you look, you've got this little knife inside. And that knife, you can dial it higher or lower. And I'll show you what that's for in just a minute. This is what you use to actually open and close it to grab the wire. And then as you guys can see here, you can lower it to have the blade not shown, and then the blade extends all the way up. We're not going to play the video because I'm going to show you. All right, leave it on the screen just for a second so you guys can see it. All right, back to me. So this guy, what you're going to do is you open this up, and this is for your large round cable. So right here we have some 4/0 welding cable. Doesn't matter if it's black or red. That's more to help you when you're wiring your van. But this cable, you can see my thickness of my finger. This is extremely thick cable. This is what you want to use for battery terminal connections. So going battery to battery to battery. So like 100 amp hour battery to 100 amp hour battery. This is 4/0 is good to use on systems where you have, well, like I just said, multiple batteries. Now if you can't put this in here and strip it, obviously. So what are you going to do? Well, you could take a pair of this or your cutters, and you could somehow put it in here and then rotate this around. Or you could take a box cutter and try to neatly cut around it. The professional tool for the job is this, okay? And the reason is because this opens up, your cable comes through, and then depending on the thickness of this rubber that you're trying to remove, that is what you're gonna dial in the height of this, the wheel, okay? So once you do that, you just let it come down, and you want to make sure that you are, it doesn't really matter what direction you're going in, but you need to make sure that you're going evenly. What can happen is if you kind of hold the cable, it'll turn like a corkscrew and your cut won't be good. I'm not saying I'm the perfect person to do this, but just take it and go easy. Take your time. That way you can just do it once, you're not wasting cable. Now, I don't know if this is set for this cable because I've been doing some van stuff. I mean, different stuff in van. Okay, let's see here. So that's not enough, so we're gonna come down. We're gonna expose more of the blade. Try to get it close to where we had it. And then again, we just wanna come up. And then we wanna come back down. Okay. Now I'm just doing this for display purposes only, so I may have cut the wire. But you can see how it's cutting the wire. Okay, let me see if I can just get this done. Yeah, and it's not going to be, you're going to have to practice at this. Because every wire is a little bit different. But the more you practice, the more you can get good at it. And these thicker cables are much harder than the thin ones. But all we're doing is we're just coming and we're just rotating around, just pivoting around there. And then once we take it off, we can see how our copper is exposed, and then we can just twist. And see, we've got a clean, very clean, and we didn't tear up our copper threads because we can dial in the distance. And this is obviously too small, but you get the point. You would slide this on. And then now we come to our next tool. So I'll give you a couple seconds to look on the screen, get some info. All right, and so the next tool we're going to talk about would be the next step of this process, and that is this guy. So this is our hydraulic crimper. So I'll come back for the information. Just hold on 1 second. So the hydraulic crimper is really important because you can't manually crimp this. It would not make a good connection, and it would be very dangerous because if you remember how we talked about the resistance of this cable not having a good connection, this is critical. This is the most critical connection because the most current's going to go through here. For example, if you had 4 100 amp hour batteries, you have the potential of 400 amps being pulled through this one piece of cable. So the connection between this and the terminal, I hate that I'm using a baby terminal. I've used all the ones I have in the shop. But this hydraulic crimper makes a extremely tight hydraulic connection. So what's going to happen is you're going to put your little lug. So imagine this was a big one. We're just doing a small one right now. And it sits in here. All right, and then that little die comes down. And then it'll actually kind of sit in there just like that. So see this flare on the back? That flare kind of holds it in there. And then you need to watch it and just be careful, but what'll happen is you get this knob on the side and you just close it, and then you're just going to pump. And then what's going to happen is this die is going to close, and it's going to eventually get to a point where it starts crushing the, here you can see, there we go. It starts crushing that joint. And then once you're done, you just take this valve, release it. See, comes down. And then when you remove it, see it crimps it. Now, obviously there'd be a wire in here. I guess I could have showed that to you guys. But then once you're done with this, let me show you what product that is one more time. So that is this guy. Hydraulic cable lug tool. Okay, this is very important. When you're on Amazon, you know how things are. Pay attention that it is 6 gauge to 4/0. Okay, so you got that. See, it makes a little crimp like that. All right, so now we can back up, and let's talk about 2 things that we skipped. So let's talk about this guy. So this guy right here is it's just a cable cutter. But again, what to pay attention to 4/0, because you want to make sure that you get the right one. All these pictures kind of look the same. You know, Amazon, see, there's like a ton. So you need to make sure that this is going to fit the wire that you're cutting. So yeah, you want to do 4/0. So get that info. And so here's that cable, there's the cutter I was telling you about. So it's not a small thing, but that would make sure that that diameter is big enough, because you want to use this, and I'm gonna make a mess here, but that's okay. So when I cut this, I'm gonna show you why this is so important. So when I cut this, this is why you want to buy it. Look at this. See how clean? It cuts so clean that it's actually shiny. And that's really important, because you don't want this to be all frayed and busted, because when you go to put it into your lug, if it's all frayed, it's not going to go in far enough, and it's not going to make a good enough connection. So yeah, so this thing is awesome. All right, let's show you guys that. I'm gonna leave that on the screen when I put this up. Okay, so next thing we're gonna go to is we're going to go to the heat shrink tubing. All right. And I'm going to give you guys a link, because this is crazy. It's crazy to write all that down. Yeah, we'll do a link later, but you can write that down. I'll hold it on the screen for a second while I get my little example. Okay, so coming back to me, here we go. So this is the heat shrink tubing, and it comes in a box like this. So you got all kinds of different sizes. You got big ones, small ones. And it's hard to tell sometimes online what you're getting. I mean, this case of this heat shrink is $11, so if you get the wrong one, you can just try again. But you want to make sure that there's this like this adhesive on the inside. So I don't know if I can pick that up. It's like you'll look and there's like a glossy, almost like a gel inside. And what that is when you put this over, let's see if we can do this. All right, just bear with me. These are not all the size. But when you take your heat shrink tube and you put it over your lug, and you go to use a heat gun to shrink the heat shrink, you want the adhesive version of this so that it kind of oozes out. It's like a clear gel that oozes out, and it actually will seal. So instead of just the compression of the heat shrink sealing, you're going to have the gel come out the edge, and that's really going to waterproof this joint. It'll keep it from oxidizing, and it'll keep it from rusting. I mean, not rusting, but yeah, oxidizing. Because that can compromise the wire connection. So these things are, yeah, they just come in a box. They're super cheap. All right, so I'm gonna get ready to go back to the other screen here. And then we're gonna talk about this. So these rolls are what I used for the bigger connections. Here, this is a good example. See that like gel that's coming out? That gel is, you want to make sure the heat shrink tube has it. I mean, this stuff is dirt cheap, but stuff that's even cheaper than this sometimes doesn't have that little gel. And that gel adhesive, I don't know what it is. It's just some type of, almost like a glue, almost like a hot glue. It makes a really, really good seal. It's also kind of a visual indicator that you've got it hot enough to where you can stop heating it with a heat gun. But yeah, let's talk about this roll. So I'll go back here. So this stuff, this is pretty much all I have left of that. But this stuff is great because let's just use this black heat shrink, for example. You can kind of tell you're going to need something like this for your bigger wires. So you can see you're going to put that on your bigger wire, and then that way this thing can be the terminal that you choose for it, 6 gauge, 4/0, 2/0. It'll be the right one. And yeah, these things come in rolls, and I use this on my van and a little bit on the other van, and this is what was left. But I mean, it's $10, so we can't go wrong. All right, so there's a roll. And then we're gonna go back, so let's go and check out, what's the next thing I wanna show you? Let's talk about the lugs, and then we'll move on after this. So lugs, so here's the name of the lug. We've got heavy duty battery ring terminal. And this is for, again, very, very, very important, 4/0. So 4/0 is the first number, and this 5/16 is the second number. So what is that? So let me show you. Let me get my drawing pad out here so I can show you guys. Basically, the first number is the size right here, the barrel, you would almost call it, the lug end, and then this 5/16 is this hole diameter. Yeah, so let's go over here. So you'll have a, so this is the wire lug, and then it's kind of flared up here on the back. and then the terminal comes out, kind of does its thing, and then comes back in. So this diameter is going to be the, and just for this example, this is the 4/0. And I know that's a 0, but the terminology is 0. So you get the, that's the inner diameter is the 4/0. So that allows that cable to go in. And then you want your cable to kind of pretty much come about right there. And then this ring right here, so this diameter, this is going to be the 5/16. Now, why that's so important that you get this right, the reason that you want to get that whole diameter right is you want to make sure, so you're going to have these things called like a terminal block or a terminal post or something like that. There's many different ways you can do this, but we're going to use a bus bar for this example. So a bus bar is just a common point where multiple wires of the same polarity. So for example, like positive or negative. Let's just say that this is our negative bus bar. So you can call it, almost like your ground, but technically it's negative. So say this is our negative bus bar. Well, these are screws. And you want to make sure that this screw diameter is equal to 5/16, so that when you go to put this on here, that it's a perfect fit, and you've got good contact area. So let's see here if I can do this. Okay, so that contact area, you want to make sure it's good. If you don't pay attention and you go on Amazon and you buy one that's a different size, so they say this is 5/16, and I bet if I go down here, there's right here. So see the difference? See how big that is? So that would not be good. For example, come back over here. Say you got that one that's wrong. Well, you'd have this much area that is not contacting metal. And so that wouldn't be a very efficient system. It also wouldn't be a very safe system. Okay, I'll digress. I'll go back here. Here we go. So a little lesson in why these two numbers are very important. That the wire is getting its home that it goes into. It's comfortable with a 4/0 and a 4/0. And then the hole at the end, 5/16. Sometimes you'll see a quarter, but make sure that that matches your bus bar. Here, let's look at a bus bar real quick. Okay, this is the bus bar I'm talking about. So as you can see, 5/16, right? So that one would be perfect. 3/8, that would not work. 5/16, great, great. So you guys kind of get my point. All right, so these guys are available on Amazon. It's $20, but you're getting 10. You may ask, well, Nick, that's kind of expensive. This is a UL listed piece, which is good. There's a bunch of stuff that you can buy overseas, and sometimes it's not pure copper. It will be tin copper, or it will be copper plated, and it might look like copper, but it's not pure copper. Pure copper is going to give you the best efficiency. So you want to go with pure copper. They're saying bare copper, but they do have a, and then you can look here. So it's UL listed, and there's the number. UL stands for Underwriters Laboratory, and so they're an independent organization that tests stuff like this and puts their stamp on it. So you'll see a lot of it in the electrical field. So if you can find, is that, let's see, U and L? If you can find it, you want to do that. For the big stuff. Now, I may do some double speak here, because when we get to this low voltage wire, it's really not that big of a deal. For stuff like LED lights, these things are not that critical. All right, so we talked about this tool, this one. We'll come back up to that one. So before we get into this low voltage stuff, let's, well, I know the 12 volts is low voltage. Let's go back up here. Let's go to, okay, all right, I'm getting you guys dizzy here. All right, so this is another crimping tool. Oh, actually, we haven't talked about crimp tools. So this is another one of my tools that's a must-have. So when you start to do your van building, you're going to be working with 12-volt items. And once you get all your 12-volt done, then you're going to hook your 12-volt up to possibly an inverter. So an inverter is stepping up your 12 volts to 110, 120 volts to power household outlets that you may have in the van. So that's stuff to maybe power a microwave, an induction stove, you know, charge your laptop, anything that needs household power that you want to plug into it. I mean, even a toaster. So while these tools right here are excellent for 12 volt wire, you're going to need something to connect or start crimping your AC, your alternating current components. So like the 110, 120, and that's what this crimper is right here. So you can see these, I can't point it to you on the screen, but each one of those spaces is for a different item or crimping component. It's called a ferrule. So a ferrule fitting cleans up the end of a stranded wire. And if I can actually pull, if I can get my ferrule kit, I have to come back to this one. So imagine this. So get this part in your head, and then let's back up, and we're going to go to a item that so let's go down to its little brother over here. So this is a tinier kit. So I recommend both. So we've got the big one for AC. So household mains power, for example. The baby one right here, and this is for 12 volt. So I want you to look what's in here. You see these there's these plastic caps with these little metal fittings. So what happens is the wire goes through each one of these depending on the thickness of it. And this little machine right here opens up, right here. It opens up and it crimps the wire. So you can kind of see here, see how we have in the top left, we've got our tool. So we've got our tool right here that we bought, that we stripped the wire. We've got our ferrule. So this ferrule, what it does is it encapsulates this stranded wire. You put it in there, and when it crimps it or crushes it, it makes it into this really neat kind of shielded wire. Now, what's nice about this, when you stick this into like a fuse box or any other place where you're going to make this connection, you don't have to worry about damaging these stranded wires and having them break off or fall on the floor or anything like that. It kind of gives it like an extra layer of protection, and it makes it have a better connection. So you'll notice some of these actually go into like an outlet or something that has a screw down terminal. So when the screw pushes on here, this shielded ferrule will protect it and it won't cut into the stranded wires. So this is how true professionals prep wire before making connections. I'm not saying you can't do stranded wire and then just do the old school, twist it, put it in, and then crimp it down. You can do that, but you may only be able to do it one time. When you take that out, you may have cut the wire, and this is all really for safety than anything else. So there's our crimper, and I don't have that one with me. This was a pretty good illustration to show you guys how it works. I think you got it. So imagine this one is just the big brother. So this guy is going to use bigger ferrules. So see this right here? So this one, and this one would be used, even this fourth one, these would all be used for 12-volt systems. Then, actually, let me walk that back. They can be used on any wire, both 12 volt or the higher voltage. This blue one right here is the one that I actually used for my inverter on the van. So that way, because as we talked about earlier, all these wires, they're stranded wires. So this protects it. So next, let's go to our two ferrule tools. I think we got what they are. So this one is the crimper for the bigger ferrules, and then this one is the crimper for the smaller ferrules. And we're going to go over here to this. So you know how we were talking about 120 volt wire? So you need a this is a 10 gauge 3-wire. So the 10 gauge 3-wire is like your household wire. So if you've ever wired a home and you go to Lowe's and you hear about 10-2, 10-3, 12-2, 12-3, stuff like that, what it's referring to is the gauge of the wire. So this one is 10 gauge, and the 3 is pretty obvious. It's how many strands are coming out, how many wires are coming out of it. Now notice this is marine stranded wire. Because again, if you guys remember, in a van, you don't want to use solid copper wire to do any of your wiring. You want to have stranded wire. It's more flexible, it's more resilient to vibration, stuff like that. So right here we got our 3 wires, and since we're dealing with higher voltage now, there we go. Since we're dealing with higher voltage, where are we? There we go. Since we're dealing with higher voltage, it's even more critical that our crimp connections are very sound. So we're going to use this crimper with one of these blue ferrules. So you see how this is 6 gauge? We haven't talked about this, but I already have it in the cart to explain it. So we got our 6 gauge. And so this is another challenge about buying stuff off of Amazon, is because you're getting into different, I guess the word is nomenclature, where you're getting millimeters squared versus gauges of wire. So you want to make sure you're getting ferrules specific to the gauge. So 6 gauge ferrule, there we go. And then we're going to back up and we're going to go to our 6 gauge wire. Okay, so it makes sense. You're finding stuff. The reason I'm going so deep into it is Amazon puts so many words here and it can kind of get confusing. So at the end of this video, again, we'll have links so you guys can just buy the stuff. This is the exact stuff that I bought for the vans that I build. So you're getting exactly what I used. I've already vetted this stuff. I've used it, so I feel pretty good about it. So now that we have our 3 wires, we have our ferrule that's on there. That allows us to safely connect it to our output of our inverter. That's why this kind of choices that I'm presenting to you guys, this is going to help you kind of lay the foundation to get that power system up and running. All right, so we got that. We understand this wire. We understand the crimper for, this all fits the 12 volt stuff. This fits our LED lights, all kinds of stuff like that. We talked about the big crimper. So since we're on the topic of wiring, let's go down here. Here, I'll go slow, that way you guys can see we've actually gone through this. So we've gone through that up the top, this piece, our insulation, our heat shrink, our cable cutters, our hydraulic crimper. We've talked about our AC wire, so our 10-3 wire that's stranded, the marine grade. Our smaller crimper, our lug. All right, so now we get into the fun stuff. So when I call it fun stuff because this is the low voltage wiring that you're going to use for your LED lights in your ceiling, probably your little 12 volt light switches and stuff like that. This is the stuff that's not carrying heavy current. It's not used to charge anything. And yes, I do say that with an asterisk. You can use this to power like a USB port to charge maybe your phone, but don't expect it to charge like fast charging and stuff like that. You'll need to find out how much current your fast charger is pulling to make sure that your wire is sized appropriately. We'll talk about that in a whole other video. But the reason this is fun is this is just kind of the wire that you can kind of put everywhere, do all your lights in your ceiling, some switches, lights under your cargo area. And what's nice is, again, it's just so cheap. And so this is what it looks like. It's just a big ball of black and red wire. Yeah, so you see here they have a picture of it, powering an LED strip. So right here, you guys are learning some stuff. This is a 22-2 wire. So that's 22 gauge 2. And I know this is probably not something we should put in the video, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Best fuse for 22 AWG wire. So if you go on Google and it says what size fuse for 22 gauge wire, now this is just for an example purpose only, just so I can kind of show you what that means. That thin wire, 22 gauge, this guy right here, all right, only 3 to 6 amps. So very, very little. So 3 to 6 amps for this wire. This wire, 400, okay? So, do you see the difference? So, only use this for low voltage, tiny stuff. Okay, little mini lesson there. Okay, so you can get a whole ball, 65 feet of this. Actually, this one thing lasted me like 2 vans. So it was pretty good. And then I found this right here. This thing is awesome. I thought it was a joke. I was like, yeah, it's too good to be true. So what this does is this allows you to tap into an existing power wire that you're running in your van. Okay, that's a loaded question. If anyone is new, I don't want you using this like I just said. Let me draw it. Okay, so let's just say you've got a power wire running through your van. Let's do this. All right, you got a power wire. Got a power wire running through your van. So what this does is, let's say this right here is powering, let's just say this is like a light, okay? So this one's powering like a light. It's a terrible light. It's powering a light, and then your battery's over here. So what you want to do is you need to make 4 connections here. So before, what you would do is what? You would cut this, then you'd cut this, and then you'd crimp this to this, and then you'd crimp this. You'd use like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'd probably use like 6 crimps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 crimps to make this one connection to this other light. So these are all light bulbs right here. All right, I can do better. Let's clean all this up. There we go. So you got these light bulbs up here. So you need to make these connections. All right, so what this does, there we go. What this does is it just snaps on the wire, and then you put the other wire in the back of it, and you snap it down, and that's it. You're done. It was so awesome. I had like 6 lights in my personal van that I put in, and one, I didn't have the room to really, whenever you're working on the ceiling of the van, I'm gonna prep you guys if you haven't done this. Anything that your hands are stretched up above your head, it's the hardest job. Doesn't matter what tricks I do or tools that I have. When you're wiring above your head, the shorter time it can take to do that, the better. So what this thing does right here, okay, just memorize this picture in your head and then go over here, okay? So what it does is it will come over here and it will grab those 2 wires, and then it'll grab these 2 wires. So it'll connect these 2 and it'll connect these 2 in that little box. So one snaps over the wire and then one snaps, and then all you have to do is you just click it, click it, click it. And yeah, Drew, these things are awesome. They're really, really cool. Hold on a second. I gotta sign into chat. Yes, these are great. Let me back up. Just up. Okay. Yeah. Every now and then you find something that's really awesome. So we'll do a link to that. And then, so I use those two, and then I use this. Oh wait, we're not done yet, hold on. And then for my not longer runs, but my more critical runs, so only use this wire for this, like stuff like this right here, like these things. See right here? We'll talk about these in just a second. These kind of cheap LEDs, just use it for these, okay? See the wire? Okay, we'll get back to this in a second. For your switches, so 12-volt switches in the van, or maybe some more, what am I trying to say? Anything that's a switching circuit. Now this is my personal opinion. This is not anything I read. It's just stuff, after doing the research and stuff, you know, I want to build stuff to where it's, you know, usually always slightly overbuilt so that the longevity, you're not having an issue with it. It also just comes down to safety. Because, I mean, the last thing you want is just a thought in your mind that maybe you wired something wrong in the van, or you go to park the van for the winter or whatever, and you're just getting peace of mind. So what we've done is we've gone from a 22 gauge wire, and we've bumped it up to 16 gauge. So since I've been teaching you guys about gauges in this live stream, which is supposed to be about Amazon parts, but hey, no time like the present. The gauge, the lower the number, the thicker the wire. So it's very backwards. That's why it's difficult for people to, you know, get the concept. Because the lower the number, the thicker the wire. Yeah, it's just sometimes hard to grasp. And then the two here, this is, yes, Drew, overdoing the wire is probably good. So don't feel like you have to overdo it. So what I'm talking about is go from like a 22 gauge to like a 16. You know, you don't need this powering your ceiling lights. But if you go to, there you go. So when you go to a 16 gauge wire, you also are able to get something that like this that's more that's shielded better, and the shielding helps you pull it through the van. If you look really close, let's see here. Okay, if you guys can see right here, you have an outer white coating, a white, you know, plastic, and then you have the or rubber, and then you get the inside. So you got this double layer of protection. So if you nick this white part, it's very unlikely that you've damaged the inside of the wire. That's why using this marine stuff is really nice. Okay, so this is kind of a rule of thumb. When you're building a van, just treat it like you're doing stuff on a boat or a yacht or anything like that. It's the same thing. It's just, instead of being in the water, you got 4 tires. But pretty much all the other principles are the same, because you're going to have, you have all the stuff inside of a van. It's humid because you're breathing inside of it. It gets really cold. It gets really hot. It's moving, and so that's why marine stuff just fits kind of hand in hand with van components. The cool part is you can find stuff on Amazon that's pretty reasonably priced. So this is this is 50 feet of 16.2, and yeah, this stuff is just good to, pull out through the van. Use it for your light switches. Use it for maybe bigger lights, like if you have some type of like desk light or something like that. That's not just a simple LED. You could use this to power like quick charge USB devices, something that you want to run just a little bit more amperage through. So if we go here and let's just change our query to 16. So we went from 3 to 6 amps, and now we're all the way up to 15 amps. So, and I would say most car wiring is about usually about 10 to 15 amps that you can pull through there. So you see you went from like 3 to 8 all the way up to 15. And one thing you may want to do, lose my place on here. There you go. So one thing you may want to do is, it's not necessary that you're oversizing a system, but say you had 2 or 3 22 amp circuits. 22 gauge wire runs, but then you had 10 that are 16 gauge. You might as well just do the whole van for those specific areas, just 16 gauge. That way when you go to fuse the line, you'll just have a handful of 15 amp fuses. You won't have 15, 10, 5, 7.5. You only have like one fuse for all those runs. Okay, I have to put a caveat to that. That is, when you do that, you're only doing it for stuff that, if it demanded more than 15 amps, it would damage it. So for example, if you were running the circuit with a 22 gauge wire, like those lights, you need to fuse that, the fuse needs to be sized to whatever it is running. So that little LED light, the little puck light in your ceiling, let's say the max wattages on that is like 3 amps, all right? So you might fuse that at 5, for example. You would not fuse it at 15, because if that unit failed, you'd never blow the fuse, and you'd have a live failure over here. So you want to make sure that if it does fail by pulling too much current through it, that the fuse actually fails. So we can do that in another live stream. We're going to get kind of on a tangent here. Let me back up. Let's see here. Okay, so we got that. Here's the lugs. So you can actually buy them with the heat shrink in the kit, which is pretty nice. So this actually comes with the heat shrink and the lugs together. It's not bad. And then probably should have gone over this first. This is the main copper wire, also referred to as welding wire for the van. They call it welding wire because it's used for welding leads for welding, or you can use it because of the amount of current that it can hold. So what I use is Windy Nation. So if you go on Amazon, type in Windy Nation, they have some pretty legit stuff. I've been happy with what they have online. What's really nice about what they provide is they don't only give you just one black or red cable in a specific length. They give you multiple lengths and multiple colors. So you can do 20 feet of black, 20 feet of red in an order, 200 feet of black, 200 feet of red in order, like that, okay? And then you can also, these are 6 gauge cable. You would just highlight this, copy it, change this to 8 gauge, 2 aught, 4 aught, etc. for that. All right, so we're going to get to the video here, and we're going to talk about just some extra things that I thought about when I looked all this up. So I had all these kind of core things, and then these items I'm about to show you is what I bought with those items. So right here, this ferrule, I needed to purchase that. I needed to purchase this separate. So these didn't come into a kit. These were individually purchased. One I needed for a 10 gauge wire. One I needed for a 6 gauge. If you guys are working on a van, this may be the #1 tool for van building. This is a riv nut gun. If you guys don't know what a riv nut tool is, it goes by the name of plus nut, rib nut. There's one other term for it. But anyway, what this does is, let's pull up this picture. So the way this works is, say you have a piece of sheet metal. So this is for this purposes, okay, let's go to the drawing. Let's draw this. So let's say you're in the van, right? And the van on the interior has sheet metal, okay? And it's got ribs up here, all right? So this sheet metal, and we're specifically talking about this layer, say you want to mount something to it. So what you can do is you can drill a hole into it, and then you can take this riv nut tool. And so what we're going to do is, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to zoom in, okay? So we're zoomed in, and we have drilled our hole. And okay, pull up the fancy engineer here, get our hole. Okay, actually, so we have our hole in here. Man, go back in time to figure out how to. Anyway, we got our hole. So what the riv nut tool does is the riv nut looks like this. It's got a flange on it. On the inside, it is tapped for a certain thread. In this case, it's 5/16-18. Back up. It's 5/16-18. That is the thread. That is the bolt. So if you went to Lowe's and you went to buy a bolt, you would buy a 5/16-18 bolt. And that bolt will fit in here. So the bolt will actually come in here like that. All right, just like that, something like that. Okay, so this blue part, okay, this is the sheet metal right there. So this little nut insert, not this, so forget about that. This piece right here, I drew them both the same color. That goes inside. So that piece, let's go over here. So you screw that piece onto the end of the rib nut tool. Then you insert it into that hole, which is right here. That's your hole that you're inserting into. And then when you clamp down on the gun, what's happening is it's squishing that nut. So it's squishing it, and so this part right here starts to squish like that. And it holds it in there, and then when you're finished, you can have, this is really hard to see on here, I know. When you're finished, you can actually put the put this nut into the hole. So this right here will be threaded, and then you can put the nut in there and bolt something to the wall. Not sure if that was a good example or not, but there will be a future video in a van where we'll take the rib nut gun and we'll show you exactly how it works. All right, getting to the end here. So there's our rib nut gun. Let's reset this. Okay, rib nut gun. We talked about our LED lights right here. So these are just some recessed boat LED lights. The only thing to pay attention here is the color temperature. So do you guys want warm light, cool light? Warm and cool is two different things. Warm is more yellow. Cool is more blue. All right. And then let's get to just a tad bit of solar. So whenever you're doing this circuit for solar, one thing that somebody misses, thread locker and rib nut. Oh, yeah, sometimes, so let me get back to Drew here. So I would say it's okay to put just like some blue thread locker, just a tiny dab on something you're putting into the rib nut. What you probably experienced was if you this is very hard. I do it all the time. But when you drill the hole, if the drill is vibrating, that hole is just, I'm talking ever so slightly, just a little too big. And what happens is when you go to crimp down on the rib nut, even though it crimps really well, the surface that it has to grab onto, since that diameter is bigger, is less. So it'll kind of want to turn on you. So when you, like you said, when you put thread locker on that nut and you're trying to pull it out, it breaks that grip that the compression of the rib nut had on the sheet metal. I'm thinking that's what you're talking about. Because unfortunately, whenever that happens, you're going to have to drill that out and then, put another one in. So if you've done that before, you probably already know that. But what I would do in that case is, if it is what I'm talking about with this rib nut gun, crimp it down in there. And if you don't think you did it well, open it back up, kind of tighten up just a little bit more, and then go in there one more time and really get a good compression. Because I guess what I'm saying is I do believe in Loctite, so I wouldn't say that you shouldn't use it. But what you can do, and also you may already know this, but just use a lock washer. Those don't hold as tightly as, oh yeah, it turned on, was forever stuck. Yeah, it stinks. Well, hopefully you were able to move it to a different location, or maybe just had to leave it there. So, yep, I definitely know how you feel. So, real quick, let's talk about solar safety. So, it has to do with this product right here. This is not made for solar panels, but if you guys what is the name of that channel? I'm losing my thought here. There's a DIY channel that teaches about electrical components. It'll come to me in a second. But this is a specific item that he recommended for as a breaker for your solar coming in. Most people just directly wire their solar right into their solar charge controller. And there's not, you need to have a combined, like a dual, I think this is a dual pole, but they're combined. So a breaker for your solar. So what this breaker does is it's a positive and a negative breaker. Yes, Explorus.life. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Drew. Yes. That is what it is. Yeah, Explorus.life, and he recommended this, and so I've used it in the vans I've done since. And what it allows it to do is, typically a breaker is on one circuit. But the thing with solar is different. You have both negative and positive feeds coming in that need to be broken at the same time. Normally, your negative in a household situation would be your common wire. So really your hot wire, or the positive, is what is being broken in the circuit in a home. But on a van, you need a special breaker for the solar that can break both positive and negative circuits at the same time. And this is what it looks like. If I go, let's see here, back up. So, and then, so this is also the channel Explorus.life. This is the box that he recommended that you use with it so that you can enclose it. And then there's this rail, this little rail inside. So that rail, it just clips right into there. You shut the door, and this actually even comes with these cable glands. See these white cable glands? So it's a really neat system. Again, what's exciting about this stream is this is all Amazon stuff, so it's, it's very, very inexpensive, but it's good stuff. So I purchased this one and this box, and it just helps you because. So one thing here, I'll give you an example. We were working on, well, Thomas was using his van, and we were. The reason that we wanted to do a full reset on the system, and I had the breaker in there. And so what's nice about when you want to do a full system reset, I got my train of thought here. So we put so much solar on top of his roof that even when we disconnected the main power system without shutting off the solar panels on a sunny day will provide enough power to keep the fridge running and some other items. So it was funny because you turn the system off, but the system's still on because there's that much power coming in from the solar. But if you didn't have that system, you'd not be able to fully turn off your system. So you can see how dangerous that is by not being able to fully disconnect that power. Because if you don't know it, solar panels are always on. They're always on. They're not, any bit of light that goes in there is creating that electricity. So if you have solar panels on your roof and you have those wires inside, those are live if they're not being covered up while you're doing the install. So quick pro tip, get some pieces of cardboard when you're installing solar panels on your roof and just keep them covered. Make sure there's no light in there when you're working on it. But having a breaker like this, that is going to allow you to fully turn the system off and know you have a full disconnect of the power. Let's see here. And then, Yeah, you can actually buy solar panels, and you can buy Renogy solar panels on Amazon. And I like to buy stuff on Amazon as a builder because of this thing right here, the date. I can better predict when it's going to get to me. If I order through manufacturers, it's hard to know when something's coming. And it's kind of a pain in the butt. You can't kind of plan things. So, and then let's see here. And then last but not least, we have our disconnect. So this disconnect, this is okay. This is one I have in my personal van. So I wanted to show you one that I would say is okay. I've used it for 3 years. Haven't had any problems with it. But we're going to, for other builds, I step it up a little bit and I use a different one. But if you're on a super tight budget, this one is one that I've used. It's extremely important that you look at the current rating. This one is 455 amps, 12 volts. So that's really important you do that. But if you go to, let's go to Blue Sea Systems, battery disconnect. So Blue Sea Systems, highly recommend. No affiliation, but I highly recommend pretty much all the van components you put in there. I would just default use Blue Sea. I really like that I can go onto their manufacturer's website. I can get the exact specifications on the max amperage. I can get like engineering drawings, schematics on how that circuit works. And I know if I just have everything, that if I needed to check or if I had a question about adding a component, say like a new fridge or like, I don't know, like switches to control like an inverter or something like that, like I would be able to go to a technical document and reference it and know what they're talking about. So, but as you can see, we go from $14 to like $100, or 63. But I mean, if this is what's controlling the power for your whole entire van, you could probably see how 63 is probably no big deal. So what's nice about this one is we get a little bit of boost. Where's the specs? We get a little bit of boost in amperage. So I think it can do like an intermittent 600 amps, max 48 volts, but we're always doing a 12 volt build at the current moment. But what Blue Sea also has is this thing. So I'm just going to give you an example. Okay, I'm just giving you an example of what we did. This is a technical thing to do. So if you're a DIYer, maybe don't do this because this has to do with combining two different chemistries of batteries for a momentary charge. Let me explain. So we put in Thomas's van a Blue Sea Systems battery combiner. And we did this as a safety item. So he has a wheelchair lift on the outside of his van. And one thing that I wasn't comfortable about was when he was using that, it was connected to the engine battery. So let's just say the engine battery was weak. He's going in and out of the van, and then it just dies. So there wasn't a backup plan for him to have additional power, yet he has 400 amp hours of iron phosphate in the back of his van that he would not have access to. So what I thought about was, I was like, there has to be a safe way to temporarily just combine the batteries. And I kind of thought about, again, the marine industry, like going fishing with my dad, and the relationship between like the boat we had a trolling motor, and then there's a motor in the back. And then sometimes on these boats, like fishermen are out there, if you guys are fishermen, you'll go and then say you actually killed the battery. Well, if you have like a trolling motor battery hooked up to the circuit, you could combine the battery system, use that to start the engine again, and then get home. So what I did is I just said, hey, why don't I just do that to this? So what I did is, okay, first, here's the disclaimer. It is not good to combine different battery chemistries. So if you have lead acid or AGM or gel, those do not play happy with lithium, because one, they have different voltages that they like to be at. Lithium is higher, and so they're not happy, and it can cause problems. But if you're in an emergency situation and you need to just use it for 2 minutes, and your system's properly fused to where you could do that safely, then this battery combiner is what we used on his van. And so the theory is, if the main battery ever dies, then he can just turn to his right-hand side, combine the batteries just for a minute to get out of the van, come out, and then reconnect it, and then jump start the van and get going. So it's just very momentary. I'm saying maybe like 30 seconds to a minute, just enough to continue that motor working. Let me pause for a second, look at the chat here. Okay, so he's got a switch that he's using. That's cool. I'll have to check on that. And we'll have to check on the new switch. All right. And then this last bit of stuff down here, we've got, just some simple USB charger, stuff like this, very DIY friendly to hook up, charge your phone, stuff like that. There are Blue Sea System circuit breakers. If you need those, you can have. There's all kinds of different amperage for whatever circuit. You've got a dimmer switch, cable glands, all that good stuff. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff that you can find on YouTube. We don't got too many people in the chat now. Drew, you might be the only one in the chat. But we can do a little Q&A if you guys, or if you want to, if you have any other questions before we end this live stream today. So that's pretty much all I have for the Amazon stuff. It's got me thinking of a lot of other ideas. So maybe patching up, putting in some future live streams, like little modules where it is like a couple of parts that I put together for a certain system in the van, and then doing kind of a recommendation for you guys on that. Another thing I can do is kind of walk you through, oh man, Drew, that's a great question. Any advice on shower pans? Your question may have made my decision on this van back here. So, shower pans. So in this van, in another stream, I will do, I'll do my little headset thing so you can actually walk in the van. But yeah, this is the coolest thing. So I've been back and forth on this van, whether I'm going to put in a shower or enclosed shower or not. And so I had two ideas. My first idea was I actually bought I bought a stainless steel mop basin, and that you would be able to walk into and use as a shower. So that is an option. It's hard to get to right now. We might do this in another video. But so my second option was I went to Rec Pro and I purchased this. So this is a 24 by 30 inch shower pan. And I mean, it's extremely cheap, but this is, it's all it needs to be, because when I build the walls, you know, this is literally just to catch water. So I think this is maybe 3 inches deep. If you look on the bottom here, see how it has all these cups? And so that allows it to, you know, have like a stable foundation. And then it has just a basic drain right here. So I'm sure that doing a build out on this pan, so it's hard for me to have a recommendation because I haven't done one yet. This would be my first shower. Other than building a residential shower or bathroom in a home, that's what I've done, but it's pretty much the same thing in a van. The only thing in the van that I would say, okay, so let's just say I recommended this shower pan for you. The next complications is how high are you going to build this platform off the van so that you can get the plumbing to be able to drain. And then also, you know, what tank are you going to use a gray water tank, or are you going to kind of really DIY it, maybe have like going into, you know, a bucket or something like that. But advice on shower pans, I think this one from Rec Pro is going to work really well. It's very simple. The other one I bought that I was talking to you about, I wonder if I can bring it over there. The thing is heavy. Let's see. Nope. That thing is under a bunch of stuff. So it was a, let's see here. It was a musty, let's see here. Mop Sink Stainless. Yep, here you go. Okay, you may laugh, but at the time I thought this was a pretty good idea. So this is what I was going to use, because not only was it stainless, but it gave me enough height over the floor, as you can see right here, to get the plumbing in without having to build a thing, you know, something like that. The only problem was everything in a van comes down to like millimeters. Like, you really got to use every single bit of space possible. And if you have a component like this in the van, it kind of takes over everything in the van, and then everything is just kind of trying to deal with it. So when I'm doing this van behind me, oh yeah, so this is the thing that I bought. This one, no, this is a small one. They have one, it's much bigger. 2028. It was like the 30. Anyway, it's same thing. It was pretty much one of these, and that's what it looks like when you're standing in it. But this height right here, you know, 6 inches, that's a lot. You're taking a lot of the headroom out. And like you were saying, most people, like you're saying, most people put a platform down to kind of control where the plumbing's going. But yeah, that platform, definitely let me know how it works out. A shower pan in the center walkway and putting wood planks over it with a wraparound curtain. Okay, so it kind of like built in the floor. That's cool. I'd say built in the floor like that, I think that's perfectly fine. I think a lot of people will get wrapped up in thinking that everything in the van has to be, insulated. So that thickness of the insulation, say like it's an inch, or maybe you do 2 inch and then 1/2 inch of the floor. That pan, that's not going to be a significant place of, heat loss, especially if you have like a diesel heater or a gas-fired heater in the van. Drew, I guess I'm going to have to build that shower in here, right? Show you how I do it, and then you can let me know how yours goes. I'll wait a couple seconds. Let me know if you have one more question here, and then we will probably call it a night. See if anything comes in real quick. Explorers.live. All right. All right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed this live stream. We will be putting in the links in the comments below. It'll probably take a day to put those in, and then that way you guys can check out the stuff on Amazon. Then again, as usual, if you have any questions, put those in the comments below. Be happy to put that in a future video and answer those questions. And that'll end the live stream tonight, and we'll see you guys in the next one.